Hi, today I'm talking with Joe Vignola Sr. We'll cut to him in 1 second, and I usually try and give a little background on who I'm talking to. I looked into his background. There's too much. I couldn't sum it up. He's done a lot, so I'm gonna say um, he's a happily retired guy with a vast background in politics and I guess public works and just helping out. He dedicated his life to helping out in a political world in a different time and in the Philadelphia area. And we'll get him on right now. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Okay. And thank you for doing this and taking time out of your day. I know we had to change the schedule because I bumped into your time and you got past the technology, so we're there.
Yes, we are.
I looked into your background. I'm usually able to glance at somebody's background and go, oh well, boom, 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 boom. I looked at your background. I gave up reading halfway through it because it was too much.
Well, it's I gave up reading in the very beginning, but yeah.
I mean, based on your background, I was like, this guy's got to be like 117, or else he never slept. You know.
Well, both are not correct. But I was blessed at an early age to be elected by the citizens of Philadelphia to public office. So my career started, I guess it has to be back in the early 80s, 1980, 1981, when I was chairman of the county commissioners of Philadelphia. And then from there, just moved on to different elected or appointed positions. In the case of people like in Montgomery County, the then governor of Pennsylvania, Ed Rendell, appointed me back in the 90s to be the financial overseer of the borough of Norristown when they were in financial distress, and I did that for 2 years while doing my full-time job of being the financial overseer for the city of Philadelphia. So it's, I've been all over the greater Philadelphia area.
So, yeah, okay, so that's how you were able to do some of it. Was you were doing sometimes one and a half, two things at a time. You were,
yeah. I mean, during part of my career when I was out of elected office, but in an appointed office when I was running what is called the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. I did that from 1995 to 2005. I ended up being the chairing a committee to assist Pittsburgh when Pittsburgh was in very bad financial straits as part of a team that then Governor Rendell wanted to put together. And then that led to Norristown. So I was doing those two things at the same time. Norristown was a lot easier than Pittsburgh because flying back and forth to Pittsburgh, even though it's only 350 miles away, less than that, still takes a lot of time. So
you did Norristown, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. So he only gave you the easy problems.
That is true. He wanted to give me Harrisburg, but I told him, that was going to be very difficult. It's not that it was going to be very difficult; is that it was not something I wanted to do.
Right.
So I ended up bailing on him on Harrisburg.
Do you still communicate with him at all?
Oh yeah. We don't see one another as much as we used to, because we started back in the 80s together. He was district attorney of Philadelphia, and I was city controller of Philadelphia. So in those days, we ended up doing some joint investigations together when he was doing what we could say white collar investigations, and he needed financial analysis or other analysis. He called on me, and I was able to. I didn't do it. I sent auditors who worked for me to assist his lawyers in analyzing financial records of businesses or government agencies when he was doing those white collar grand jury type of investigations.
So you kind of headed up the forensic accountants that came in and backed him up.
Well, you could, that's a good way of putting it.
I have to dumb everything down for myself, so
that's fine. And then, when he became mayor of Philadelphia, I was elected to city council. He was running for mayor of Philadelphia, and I just lost a race for the United States Senate. So I said, Ed, what can I do to help you get elected mayor? And he said, run for city council. And I said, I really don't want to run for office. My son at the time was newly born, and I knew what time commitments being an elected official entails, and also what time commitments running for office entails. But he prevailed on me. He had a lot of mutual friends, bug me. So I finally did it, and I served, the first term of Rendell mayorship in city council. For the second term, I left city council to become head of the oversight board that helped bail the city of Philadelphia out. And I stayed with what we call the PICA board, Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, and the acronym is PICA, P-I-C-A. I ran that organization for 10 years.
What do you do for fun?
Well, I like to do home improvements, do stuff around the house. I'm fairly handy, and ride bicycles in charity events and just for exercise.
It just seems like in the era that you were doing politics, which I think is it's definitely different. I don't know if it's better or worse than the era is now. It just seems like it would be exhausting. When you were telling even that, it just reminded me of a boxer getting into the ring over and over again and getting pummeled for years and winning some and losing some or whatever. It just
well.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that politics is a profession, and if you want to do it right, it does take a lot of time. An example being, in addition to being an elected official and a sworn elected official, I was a leader in the Democratic Party in Philadelphia, and my title was I was a ward leader. I had a ward in people referred to as the river wards. Some people refer to South Philadelphia. But given the real estate taxes that my former neighbors paid, it's a section of Philadelphia called Queen Village. And as the ward leader of the second ward in Queen Village, I used to have Wednesday night office hours. So anybody could come on a Wednesday evening if they thought they had a problem with government or, they needed some information. We used to call it favors. They need a favor. They would come see me. And those office hours would start 6:30, 7 o'clock and run when the last person left. And sometimes that was 11, 12 o'clock at night.
I don't think they do that anymore. I don't think they do that anymore.
Times, that was just the in-person. You would then take some of the problems to work the next day because people needed answers, and you would take them in and work on them the next day. So that was an experience, and you get to see your neighbors.
You said that you said Queen Village, and it's funny. I'm from Philadelphia, and when somebody says that, I try to hone it down. And Philadelphia's always been this way, but it's gotten worse or different or whatever. Where Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods, and a lot of people don't understand that if you don't come from that kind of city.
Right.
And neighborhoods have different personalities, even down to the block, you know. And now you said Queen Village, and I remember kind of where Queen Village is. But now I go to neighborhoods I've gone to for years, and I find that it's got 12 new names now. You know, it's out of control.
I mean, I was joking around. Growing up, I lived on a street called Fitzwater Street.
Okay.
And everything is relative. You say, well, we're going uptown, right? Uptown meant we're going to Market Street. We're going to Gimbel's or Lit Brothers or John Wanamaker's. We're going uptown to the movies. We're going to the Stanley or the Stanton or something like that. Downtown meant you were going down Oregon Avenue. That's now called Stadium District. And anything literally south of Market Street was South Philadelphia.
Right.
So,
and like you're saying, uptown,
South Philadelphia.
To get to the same place you're going to, say uptown, I would have said I'm going downtown.
Yeah,
and I think the city kind of put it under wraps by calling it Center City, because we kind of all kind of knew what Center City was. But if you said meet me uptown,
yeah,
I would go the wrong way. You
would go to the Uptown Theater.
Right, I would go the wrong way. Same as I told you, meet me downtown.
Yeah,
it's interesting how I'm going to ask you the tough Philadelphia question. Best cheesesteak, where is it?
Well, I'm a big Gino. Well, number one is I'm 100% Italian, and I'm allergic to cheese, so I don't eat cheesesteaks.
What?
Yeah, right. I eat steak sandwiches. I don't eat cheesesteaks.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
that's like a curse.
No, I mean it's and ironically, I tell people this that they don't, they're always shocked. You're Italian, and I said yes, I have, and I have the traditional lactose intolerance, but I have other allergies to cheese, and that runs in my maternal bloodlines. They tell me that my grandmother, who I never met because she passed away before I was born, could tolerate no dairy whatsoever.
Huh.
No milk, no cheese, no ice cream, no butter.
Best cheesesteak then. Best steak, no cheese.
Best steak. I always go to Gino's. Although, when I was in city council, I went to Pat's as well. But Gino's, the late Joey Vento, was a stickler for cleanliness. And literally, he would fire people, right, who walked away from the service counter to get something in the back and didn't come back and wash their hands. You literally could eat off the floor. I mean, and for health reasons, I've always been very conscious about hand washing, because when I was very young, I got a disease called infectious hepatitis, which is called hepatitis A today, and that comes from not washing your hands. So from the age of 12, I've been a stickler for like Lady Macbeth. I'm always washing my hands. So with all this virus going around, and they say wash your hands, I've been there, done that. I got the T-shirt.
That's what I don't understand. I don't understand that the most of the things that the governor and such are prescribing are things that your parents should have raised you to do and should be common practices. Wash your hands, cover your mouth when you sneeze. Don't get all close to people and be sneezing and stuff. Be clean in general. And when the government has to order us to wash our hands,
Well, not getting close to people, that's difficult, because being Italian, we like to hug and kiss one another when we see one another coming in, and that's if you're greeting a female, it's not unusual if you know them, to kiss them on both cheeks, and sometimes that's even true with a male. Especially if the person you're kissing is a relative is Italian. In my family, we still do that today. But we can't do it today because of this dang virus.
Well, I've been a fan of. I was the fist bump for the longest time, way before this, and then I was the elbow bump during cold season because people sneezing, and then I guess 6 months before this happened, I transitioned over to. I saw in Europe they were doing the foot tap, and I was just getting as low as possible. So I'm the opposite of a passionate Italian. I'm trying to do my best. I'm literally just almost kicking the people away socially as I can, but I just don't understand that you have to instruct people to wash their hands, and you know, we've gotten that disconnected from decent adult behavior or something.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of instructing people to wash their hands. I think people, you'll do it naturally, but now you have to do it more often. I mean, I like I do it. I'm outside doing something. I come in. I just wash my hands. My hands, feel dirty, although they're not dirty. So now you just have to do it more often if you're not in the habit of doing it regularly. And it's the new normal.
Yeah, I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase because I'm just grumpy and I resist change. But I know what you're saying.
You just go in the store. You wear a mask. What gets me is my little pet peeve for all this is that supermarkets, Giant changed it, but many supermarkets still have put one-way signs.
Yeah.
Right? And people go the opposite way. I'm always telling them, you're going the wrong way. And they look at me like I'm weird, and I point to the arrow on the floor. You're going the wrong way. Follow the instructions. I mean, it's for everybody's health.
I would have been one of those people that you would have been pointing at because I went in the supermarket when they first did these lines, and the guy at the supermarket said, "Sir, you're going the wrong way." And I said, "What?" And he pointed at the floor, and I was like, "There's rules for this now?" Yep. It's you get to a point where it's like, I'm done. I'm not doing any more changes. I'm not. But you got to go and you got to follow. You got to walk a certain way through the store, and I get it now. But in the beginning, I just didn't get it, and and the way people hand stuff to each other and everything. Hopefully, we'll be somewhat beyond this or something in the near future. What do you think is the difference between politics now and politics when you were involved in it?
Well, number one is somebody's word isn't as good as it used to be. Growing up, if you made a deal with somebody, you shook hands. That was it. You didn't need to write a contract. And also, the word compromise was not a 4-letter word.
Right.
Politics is the art of compromise. Today, if you compromise, you're a sellout. You're no good. When you look at the Freedom Caucus, right? They don't want to compromise on anything. They don't want to do anything like that. So it becomes it becomes very difficult to get anything done because the minute you say, well, we need this, the other side is against it. Why? Because you're for it.
Yeah, it does. It does seem like that. That even people are scared to agree with anybody from another party because it appears to weaken them with their party, and so there's just this line in the sand, and you're just not going to get along on anything.
Yeah. And the Republican Party is even worse because I use this example. There was a congressman by the name of Mark Sanford. You may recognize the name Mark Sanford when he was governor of South Carolina. Went to Argentina when he said he was going to be walking the Appalachian Trail, and as a result of that escapade, he resigned his congressional seat.
Okay.
He resigned the governorship. He was formerly a congressman from the 1st District of South Carolina, ran for governor, won for governor, went on his Argentinian escapade. As a result of that, resigned the governorship. And then 3 years or 4 years after that, he ran again for his old congressional seat, and he won the seat, right? He is somebody who is not shy about disagreeing. And on certain instances, he disagreed with Trump, although he had a 95% Trump voting record. Well, in a Republican primary of 2018, someone ran against him and said he wasn't Trumpy enough. And Mark Sanford lost that primary to a Republican who was what would be a Tea Party or now a Freedom Caucus Republican. Thankfully, as a Democrat, that guy who beat Sanford was so far out of it that the Democrat, for the first time, in 40 years, won that seat. So there's a Democrat in it. But had Mark Sanford won that primary, I believe the Democrat wouldn't have won. But that's the fear that the Republicans have. They're afraid that they're going to lose in a primary. So they can't agree with the Democrats in Congress. We Democrats, like growing up, when I first was elected city controller, I had to win a 4-way primary. When I ran for the United States Senate, I had to win a 4-way primary. When I ran for city council, I had to win a 4-way primary. And every one of my opponents in those races who were Republicans did not have an opponent.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So now the shoe's on the other foot. The Republicans are getting opponents, and they don't know what to do. So they're looking at Trump saying, my goodness, I got to be Trump all the way. Otherwise, I'm not even going to get to November.
Yeah, it's a shame when anybody in any party can't just vote what's right and they have to toe a line. And I tell people all the time, vote for a person or a principle, not a party,
And speaking about voting, let's get a little commercial in.
Okay.
It's not too late. It's not too late to request a mail-in ballot. And Pennsylvania changed the rules. You no longer have to be out of the county on election day or sick. You could request a mail-in ballot. The time limits are going to be very, very strict now because I think you could request it online, but you got to get it. You have to make the request by May 26th, I believe, the Tuesday before the primary, and then you have to mail it in, and it has to be postmarked before June 2nd. If not, then you could always go to a polling place and vote on June 2nd, which is very important. But your normal polling place, because of COVID-19, may not be your normal polling place. Because of COVID-19, they're combining election divisions because they don't have enough election officials willing to work the polls on election day.
Yeah, it's scary because elections are impacted by things like weather and different things, and it's just scary how this will impact it. And I know there's this huge debate over mail-in ballots, but it just seems like there's we trust so much to electronics and to this medium now. It's time to raise it to the level where we can do that remotely. This is, if nothing else, when we get through this thing, we need to learn that we do use this digital medium more.
Yeah, but also mail-in ballots. Oregon has been doing exclusively mail-in ballots for over 10 years. And there's no arguments about, voter fraud. When people talk about voter fraud, can it happen? The answer is yes. It's somebody like, banks are secure, but they still rob banks. If someone maliciously wants to rob a bank, if someone maliciously wants to violate the election laws, whether it's in person, by mail, electronically, somebody's going to get. Speaking about electronics, ATMs, I was a victim of an ATM crime. I went many years ago to get money out of an ATM. I put my ATM card, and it didn't come back out. It didn't come back out. And this was before the bank was open. I left. I went as soon as the bank opened and told them my ATM card got stuck in the ATM machine. And there was a little note on the ATM machine. Well, make a long story short, it turned out to be a group of unscrupulous people who were able to jerry-rig the ATM card. Well, needless to say, by the time I got back to the bank, these people took my ATM card. I didn't realize someone was looking over my shoulder, getting my PIN number, and withdrew the maximum out of my account. That's quickly.
Yeah, that sounds like an early version of skimming.
And here's the thing that's supposed to be something very secure. That's why I say if someone maliciously wants to do election fraud or bank fraud, there's nothing could happen. But the upshot of it is these people got caught. I ended up going to court. They ended up pleading guilty, and they end up going to jail. So that, yes, if somebody's going to maliciously violate the election laws, they're going to go to jail.
Now we're just about near the end of the half hour mark. I have to pause, but that sounds like an early version of skimming. I was just wondering what you were saying about Oregon and the mail-in votes. Do you know? And I'm not quoting you. Roughly, what percentage turnout do they get in Oregon? I'm just wondering how much better it is.
Very high.
Okay.
Like last year in the mayor's election in Philadelphia, 20% of the people voted.
Yeah.
In Oregon, it's upwards of 50%. You're electing your mayor. From the standpoint of an everyday citizen, a mayor is more important than the president of the United States.
Right.
Because if your trash doesn't get picked up, who do you call? You don't call the president. You call your mayor. Right? The mayor's responsible for that. If there's a pothole, if there's a water main break, that affects me more than the fact that an aircraft carrier broke a propeller and had to be towed into port.
What would you say before we cut real quick? What would you say to anybody who was thinking about going into politics? What advice would you give them?
I would say do it. It's worthwhile. Politics, running for office is very difficult, but that doesn't mean you can't do government service. I'm a big fan. I believe that we should have mandatory government service for all young people. 2 years, 4 years of mandatory government service. I know we did away with the draft, but this is not the draft. This is going in and doing government service, working in AmeriCorps. If you decide to go in the military, well, that's your fulfillment for government services as well. But you don't draft people into the military. But you should have government. You should have government service. There are people who go in. They could teach. They could do construction work. There's a whole slew of things that can be done to support your government.
Okay. Quick break and I'll come right back. But I have a question about that I want to ask you. That's a great idea, actually. I had an idea like that myself a while ago, but it wasn't as good as that. I like that one better. I'll be right back. Back with Joe Vignola. You were just talking about government service, and that's a really neat idea because I think that it would help. I think it would really help shape the character of people and make them have more of a buy-in to society instead of thinking everybody just works for them. And I think that this entitlement and arrogance I see more and more in people is from them never having to get their hands dirty helping other people, in part. And what kind of things, like you were talking about teaching and military, but what kind of things would you consider government service to qualify for this?
Working. If you want to do be a sanitation engineer, work picking up the trash. If you want to work road construction. If you want to be a recreation leader at a rec center, there's a whole slew of government service opportunities, and government service can also be volunteering at a drug clinic. All of that is part and parcel of giving back to the community, paying it forward, however, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so you're talking about civil service, volunteer service, giving back, jobs that don't involve you going to golf courses for meetings and stuff like that. Something where you're helping, directly.
Exactly. But local governments, state governments, even federal government can use people at the levels of answering phones during the tax season. It's not, if you have the education, it's not hard to be trained to be somebody who could, answer questions for citizens who are calling about their taxes. Same thing with Social Security. There are numerous opportunities. The best word for use that is being a person who works at a call center. Well, we're all familiar with call centers and help centers because of our technology. When our computer doesn't work, we go online, we call a call center. Well, that call center could be in the United States rather than in Asia.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. People don't realize the importance of that. And I've recently, with what's going on with this Corona event, one of the things I do is I take Monday, because Monday has always been a horrible day for me by name. It's Monday. So I've decided to do all the tech support stuff I have to do on Monday. Since it's already ruined for me by definition, why not just throw it all into the fire? And what I've learned with the tech support is I've asked people, the call gets dropped, you get onto another person. And I said, why is this taking so long? And what they said was that when they're working at home, their internet isn't as good as at work, and the calls get dropped and delayed more. So it's because you've got more home workers that's outsourced into a weaker internet infrastructure. That's why our wait times are longer. Yeah. And I never realized that, that was why you start talking with one person in the middle of conversation, you're with another person after they put you on hold because you got dropped accidentally. But if you were if you had a blank check or a magic wand, what would you do to fix things?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, number one, let's stay in government service. I think that there's 4 years of government service. If you decide to go into the military, you could cut those 4 years down to 2. So, that is one thing. Also, we were talking about elections, campaign finance reform. One of the bigger problems that we have is money in politics, but the amount of time you have to spend to raise money to get elected to office. And if you could get the money out of politics, I think that you would get more diverse people into government, into elected office. One of the problems that I see is that today, in order to run for office, you literally have to be independently wealthy, because the amount of time you have to spend to raise money means you can't work during the day and be a citizen politician. Be a farmer during the day and a candidate at night. You got to be a fundraiser during the day and go out door to door, or if you can go door to door at night. So that's one of the things that I would want to change. Campaign financing.
Where would you be at on Because I think one of the problems, and I just have my observations, but I think one of the problems is that candidates, what you said, to get elected, but once they're elected, I think you only get a year and a half of their real focus, because they're either focusing on coming into the office or keeping the office, at the beginning and the end, and you lose some focus.
Well, you're being very generous. I would say you may get 30 days out of the 2 years, because if you're in a congressional district that's hotly contested, you have to begin raising money for the next go around, and you're literally what we used to call it in the game, dialing for dollars. You go out and you dial for dollars. People don't understand, Mark, that down the street from the Capitol are the Republican and Democratic headquarters. And in those headquarters are literally phone booths where members of Congress go several hours during a day to dial for dollars, because it is not legal to call for money from your congressional office. So you go to a party office and you dial for dollars.
Wow.
So you may be in Washington for 3 days, right? But of those 3 days, you're probably spending at least 10 to 12 hours on the phone calling for money. And the other time, you're doing your hearings or your floor votes.
What do you think about term limits?
I am all for term limits for executives. I think that unless it's a family-owned business, after 8 years, you really get stale. So president, governor, district attorney, city controller, yes, term limits. I'm not big on term limits for the legislative offices, simply because it takes a while to learn the ropes. You don't have the staff that an executive in government has, as a president, a governor, a mayor, a DA, a controller, a commissioner. You need time to learn the trade. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, if you term limit those people, then the people with the institutional memory become the staff, and they become the unelected Congress people. I always tell people there used to be a show called Yes Minister on PBS. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
movie. And it talks about this new British member of parliament whose party just won the majority, and he gets appointed to be the minister of ABC department. And as part of ABC department, there is a permanent undersecretary, right, who is basically the person who is there no matter who the minister is of that department. And this minister wants to do all these great things for his constituency and for the people. And whenever he comes up with the idea, the permanent secretary goes, "Yes, minister," and goes ahead and follows his own agenda. So,
okay.
that's my point on term limits for legislative people. Now, if you have good campaign financing and you have the ability not to gerrymander districts, then races become competitive, and people will lose elections, and you'll get to turnover that way. You won't have the 60-year-old veteran, that's a 60-year veteran, in Congress. You'll have people who are staying 12 years or so, 16 years, and moving out.
Okay. So, someone mailed in. They just put a comment up that, and they asked me to ask you, what happens when someone mails in a vote and then goes to vote? How is that detected?
Okay. Well, under the old system, the ballots, the absentee ballots would be delivered to the polling place. And also on the voter affidavit, since it's delivered 2 days before the election, it would note that an absentee ballot was issued for that person. So if that person shows up to vote, right, they would cancel the absentee ballot that came in.
Okay, so the in-person supersedes the mail-in. It
Yes.
overrides it. Okay. I didn't know that. I don't think a lot of people know that. I mean, there are people like yourself that have stuff in your head that you don't consider. It's just it because you've known it. I didn't know that. I didn't know. And that knowing that makes it less possible for there to be fraud. And like you said, unscrupulous people will always find a way to do unscrupulous things. That's what they do. That's what they think about all day. But overall, I didn't know that. And that's a good system because I got the thing for the mail-in because I may not be in the area, but I wanted to have the option. But so now, I guess if I go in, I'll just take it with me and go in and vote and show them I didn't use it or whatever, and they should have me on.
Under the new system, the mail-in ballot is not going to be delivered to the polling place. So when you go in to vote in person, you'll sign that you want to vote, right, at the machine.
Okay.
In person. And then back at the County Board of Elections, they will pull up all the voter affidavits of the people who showed up to vote. And if there's a duplicate, that is, if Mark's name appears as voting in person, they'll pull his absentee ballot before they open up the envelopes.
Oh, okay.
So it's the same. It's the same thing as they used to do before, except instead of doing it at the polling place, they're doing it at the County Board of Elections.
Okay. You're happily retired and settled down. Is there anything that can make you get back?
I'm not retired. This COVID-19 has stopped me from getting out and drumming up my law business. I'm still an attorney. I still want to practice law. What I've retired from, what I left, was government. I'm no longer in government office.
I forgot. I remember your son said that retirement was a trigger word. I forgot.
Yeah.
You're doing something different. You're
right.
What kind of law do you specialize in?
Well, I used to joke around anything that'll walk in the door. But basically, administrative law, government relations. I do, government relations. Some people like to call it lobbying. I'll do some administrative law. I'll do appearances before governmental agencies.
Okay, we've had.
I don't do any personal injury law. If somebody comes to me with a personal injury case, I'll direct them to an attorney who has been doing that for a while. I haven't tried a personal injury case in 30 years, 35 years, and I wouldn't want to learn at this point in my life on somebody who is injured. I'd rather give it to somebody who's been doing it for a long time.
If you weren't doing law, if you went back in time and never got involved with the law, what would you be doing, you think?
Probably construction. What convinced me that I had to go to law school was back when I was in graduate school, a couple guys and I got together and we formed a company to rehabilitate old houses in what was then becoming Queen Village. You could buy shells at a very low cost, and we would rehab the properties and sell them flip them. Some we would keep for a while and rent them. And I used to be the finance guy, and the other two guys were the electrician and the plumber and the carpenter. They were the tradesmen. They were the skilled workers. And they got mad at me. I kept on saying, well, how much does that cost? How much time does that take? So they said, you got to come work out in the field. So they put me to work. And I started sweating soil pipe. That's before they had plastic sewer pipes, and soldering joints, mitering baseboard, doing rough carpentry. I learned all those trades, and that convinced me that this wasn't for me. I should go to law school. But if I didn't get to law school, I probably would have stayed and been going back to my family heritage of being a cement person, laying bricks. Good Italian heritage.
The Italian stoneworkers. I mean, there's a huge tradition there. Stonemasons, yeah. Tiles, ceramics. Some of the best tile work in churches and stuff.
I learned all of that. I learned to do all of that.
I'm trying to think who we've had on from the area. Do you know Ted McKee?
Oh yeah, Ted and I are longtime friends. In fact, Ted and I served on a board called at the time DRC, Diagnostic Rehabilitative Center, which was located in Center City, Philadelphia, and it dealt with those people who were dual diagnosed. And Ted McKee was a member of that board. And then he went on. In fact, when I ran for office in 1983, Ted was running for Common Pleas Court in 1983 in Philadelphia. And we always joke around. We were the class of '83 because we all won election that year. So Ted and I have been friendly for a long time.
Yeah, I've known him since around that time. Everybody loves Ted McKee.
And he became a federal judge, a circuit judge, and he was chief judge of the circuit. Really great guy.
Yeah.
Really great guy.
Yeah, and
small world, Mark.
Yeah. He gave me an education on that, and when I interviewed him, I asked him, what didn't he want to talk about? I said, we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And he was talking about how, as a federal judge, you can't just be, quote, fired. It's like getting rid of the president, to remove you.
Yeah, you have to be impeached, but but unlike the president, it's a lifetime job.
Right.
No pension. There's no pension for a federal judge. You get your salary for the rest of your life.
Huh. And he was just saying that part of that is so that you don't make decisions under the threat of losing your job. You have the freedom to make the right decision without undue influence, which is, the system is flawed. It's huge. It's cumbersome. It's flawed. But if you look at the nuances, and when I talk to somebody like you, or I talk to somebody like Ted, I learned that there are things in the system to protect us. And while there's still problems, there are protections in place. And part of the problem, I think, it's not that it's not there. It's that people aren't educated on the system enough.
Well, Winston Churchill, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, said, democracy is a very poor form of government, except for all the other governments, all the other forms of government, which are so much worse.
Yeah. You're a lifelong Philadelphia resident, right? You've always been in the area. You've always been a Philadelphia guy.
Correct. Correct.
And it's funny because is it just a perspective thing? I know politics are politics to a degree, but are Philadelphia politics unique in the universe?
Oh no! Everybody thinks they're. I read a lot of newspapers, and they always talk about things happening in Philadelphia, government and politics. But if you read the Boston Globe, Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, the Miami Herald, local governments have the same problems, the same issues. So it's not anywhere, unique. Who was the one who said, when I die, I want to be buried? Politician who said, when I die, I want to be buried in Chicago. Someone said, why? He said, so I could keep on voting. There are stories across the board. Of course, the famous muckraker said, Pennsylvania corrupt but contented. So it's all,
I think Philadelphia and I think Philadelphia is a little different for me because it has more personality in a lot of places, because there's only a few places like it that I know of that have neighborhoods the same way. Other places have communities. And we have neighborhoods, which I think are tighter than communities and maybe a little smaller, people more connected. Boston has neighborhoods. The older cities have neighborhoods. The newer cities, where people, and Philadelphia is getting integrated in this way where New Yorkers are coming, and in some ways I think they're changing it artificially, but where you have the thing where people drive right into their house and they don't talk to their neighbors. But Philadelphia is more neighborhoods.
Well, it's like we're talking about South Philadelphia, and I talked about Queen Village. Just in that area, we have Queen Village, we have Bella Vista, we have Passyunk, we have Pennsport, we have Moy-Mensing, we have East Passyunk now, we have Whitman. There are the Stadium District. So even in South Philadelphia, we have Girard Estate, we have Penrose, we have Point Breeze. Even in what is South Philadelphia, which is the community, we have the neighborhoods.
Right. It breaks down in these finite parts. And then I always say that like Delaware County, in some ways, to me, is the only suburb around that has neighborhoods in the suburb. That has strict neighborhoods. Because Delaware County seems like to be. Some ways it seems like a bunch of expatriated people from South Philly that
that's the truth. That's where they all moved.
Okay, so that doesn't mean just being judgmental. I'm glad to know. I was worried. I was just throwing a prejudice out there or something, but that's always the read I got.
I got a great political story, and maybe we'll end on this.
Okay.
This political story about Delaware County. My dad was a judge in Philadelphia, and one day a friend came by, and he goes, Lou, he goes, I moved to Morton in Delaware County, and I wanted to put a driveway in, and I needed to break up the driveway, put the cement. So I started doing the work. I no sooner started breaking up the driveway, and an inspector comes and says, "Where's my permit?" And he said, "Judge, do you know anybody in Morton, so I can get the permit?" And my father turns around and says to him, "How are you registered?" And the guy got all upset. He goes, "I registered as a Democrat." My father said, "Go change." Because Delaware County has traditionally been Republican. He goes, "Go change, become a Republican." So the guy went and changed, and he did his driveway.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the story. And thanks for your service. And thank you
for your service and what you do with Greater Philadelphia Search and Rescue. I think it's worthwhile endeavor, and the Vignola family is glad to support it, both in body and financially.
No, I really appreciate that, and it was really great to meet you. I was worried that your son was being overly optimistic in telling that we should talk, but I'm glad that when the camera clicked on it, you didn't go, what are you here for? What are you? So I'm happy. And it was a great interview. You've got a great history. You should write a book. You should write a book. But enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good dinner, and tell everybody hi.
Will do.
And thank you very much.
Okay. See you, Mark.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Great interview. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed talking to him. Good public servant. Good public servant. We need more of that. You guys take care.